All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I have to give all the praises, honor, and glory unto the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rukah Kadash. Double honors and respect to our apostles and elders, a great millstone, who rule and taught us His truth. I would also like to say peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in the 1/3. This is Brother Salah. All right, and today's video topic, all right, is basically the fall of Esau Edom, man. The collapse of his empire. We really only have like a few months in this place, man, because this government shutdown, that's been going on. Not only is it shut down because they can't, not just because they can't create things. It's not just because it's covering up the whole Epstein thing, the whole Epstein list, or even to cover up Caesar Nero, aka DJT's declining health, but also the fact that that America's economy is going bad because of all these tariff deals, man. Pushing away America's allies, within the East, within East Asia, such as India, Japan, South Korea, major key allies, the box, China's economy in, and with Caesar Nero's tariffs, right, he's actually pushing them away and actually moving them closer to China, right, and on top of that, right, not only is because Caesar Nero's doing all these things in desperation, to gain control of his economy, for people to use the Federal Reserve currency as the money, but also, right, it's it's to hide the fact that once once the economy collapses in America, which simultaneously, right, Caesar Nero is sending out them troops, right, as the elite, wicked elite say, never let a good crisis go to waste. That crisis being, the economy's going bad. The market's about to crash. They're using that opportunity, right? They send out the troops to enact martial law, right? It's to hide the fact that the economy's going bad, and as Elder Apostle Tahar posted out, right? Babylon, right? Caesar Nero, Trump, he's gonna use that I think it was like state of emergency, or no, Salaki, it was no, yeah, I remember Thwadi El Bashim. It was the Insurrection Act, right, they're going to use this crisis to enact the Insurrection Act, just to hide the fact that the entire economy is collapsing, and simultaneously, right, China is going to take the opportunity, right, to raise its economy, in the sectors that America's been thriving at, for the past, two to 3 decades, which is what tech, the tech industry, the IT manufacturing, them semiconductors, or them chips, man, the microprocessing chips, China's gonna take full well advantage of that, to boost their economy, and they're gonna use that as leverage, right, along with the tariff wars, or that the leverage that they have against against the farmers, right? Because China also buys soybeans range from America. They're also using that as leverage against Babylon, right? And which ultimately is going to topple their economy, right? And again, the reason why Edom is making all these mistakes, right, is because they know their time is short. That they have to move fast, right? So, and not only are they going to use this crisis, this economic collapse, apps to to enact, basically martial law with the Insurrection Act. They're going to use this order ab kill, to eventually roll out the MOTV, which is going to be that time of great testing. So in these days we really need to stick close to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, pray to him, repent daily, stay prayed up, fast if you need to fast, man, Stay in the scriptures, watch brothers' videos, whatever sacrifice you need to do just for it to be worthy to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man, and pray, that he doesn't cast you away, man. That he doesn't take the Holy Spirit from you, to see these signs coming, because as the scripture says, wisdom and knowledge should be the stability of thy times, right? So before I start the video, I'm going to have the opening precept, Isaiah chapter 13, verse 19. And Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees, excellency shall be as when Yahweh will throw over Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And that's what's about to happen, right? So before we play this video, we're going to get the copyright disclaimer. All right. You see it right here. Disclaimer, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. We are not making any monetary gain off of this video, not making any money, and we're not claiming any medical information. Right, so with that being said, we're gonna play the video, and we're gonna pause at certain parts to bring out precepts. So here we go.
So by now, you've probably heard all over the internet that the US is heading towards a recession. And with more and more people talking about it, this prediction feels unfortunately more and more looming. But this video isn't about whether or not there'll be a recession. This video is about what comes after. Now, in the past, following a recession,
I'll tell you what comes after. The third woe. Behold, the third woe cometh quickly. As it says in the book of Revelation, roughly paraphrasing.
The US has always
actually let's get that. Says, that's what, you want to make sure you're right. The third. Yeah, Revelation chapter 11 and verses 14 through 19. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And the seventh angel sounded, and there was a great voice in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Mashiach, and shall reign over forever and ever. And the 24 elders sat before Yahweh on their seats, fell upon their faces, and worship Yahweh, saying, we give thanks thee, O Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Almighty, which art and was and art to come, because thou hast taken to thee great power and has reigned. All the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, that shouldst give award unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and to them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldst destroy them which destroyeth the earth. So that's you fucking devils, man, you Edomites, man, you so-called white people, man. Man, the ones that sent from the line of Esau, because we know some of our people are gonna come looking like so-called white people, but there's a lineage, man, a seed line, a sperm line, a family thing, not a skin color thing. All right, and the temple of Yahweh was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and earthquakes and great hail, and all these things are, man, these things are coming to pass, man, and you can see more of these things, man. When all hell's about to break loose, man, shit hitting the fan, man. Jacob's trouble. So continuing on.
Is being able to bounce back. However, a main reason for this was because China, as their main adversary, was not as strong globally, politically, and economically as they are right now. I think this photo alone of the same train driver taken 26 years apart should sum up how far and quickly China has risen during this time. And one thing I've noticed is this time the government in China has been slowly crafting a plan.
And that's because the Lord purposely raised them up, man. And to fulfill prophecy, man, and the Lord, as we know, the Lord's going to use Moab, to help take down Esau, man. Let's get that. Psalm 60 verse 8. Moab is my washpot; over Edom I will cast out my shoe. Philistia triumph thou because of me.
In which, if it works the way they want it to, will make it almost impossible for the American economy to bounce back like they've always done so in the past. Let me explain.
I do not think U.S. policy is fully come to grips with the nature of the challenge and how far along China is in playing that game.
This is David Autor, an American economist as well as professor of economics at MIT, and he's been interviewed quite a lot in the past few months. where he makes a very big claim.
The China they think they're competing with is the China that overran US in furniture manufacturing and toys and assembly of electronics 20 years ago. But that's really not the battle that we're facing now.
In the interview, he's talking about why a China Shock 2.0 is coming. Now, if you aren't familiar with what the China Shock is and what the first one was, this is essentially what it was in a nutshell. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization, also known as the WTO, and became equivalent to having the most favored nation status with all the other countries a part of the WTO around the world. Most favored nation status means that a country treats all its trading partners equally by granting the same trade benefits, such as having low to no tariffs. And keep that in mind because I'll get into that soon. Anyway, in the first China shock, America lost a huge number of low-skilled manufacturing jobs, and a rough estimation of the amount of jobs lost, according to current Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, is 3.7 million, and these were jobs making things like clothes, furniture, toys, appliances, etc. And so instead of made in USA, many products became made in China and shipped from across the ocean. What Americans got in return, however, was overall cheaper priced goods. Now, looking back holistically, this was a blessing in disguise for America's economy, since it pushed the US to grow in other areas, that being the information technology and service sector. Still, the damage to certain places was really bad. Like a lot.
And you know that's part of prophecy because it's all Babylon the Great can focus on developing that MOTB, that micro chip, man, that Neuralink implant.
Small town blue collar communities.
Pertain to Revelation chapter 13 on down, Revelation 13:16 on down, Salakia.
Saw good steady jobs disappear over the span of less than a decade.
Every single employee of this plant will be out of work by January.
And those who felt the wave of unemployment the most were often middle-aged white men without college degrees in southern red states. Working in a factory was essentially their ticket to a decent living. And when those jobs moved overseas, it hurt them not just economically, but also politically. And going on a tangent, this discontent later fed into movements that helped fuel the rise of Donald Trump. Now, that being said, the key takeaway here is that while America lost manufacturing jobs, it did gain new ones in other sectors, and overall the economy still grew through strength in technology, finance, aerospace, and other high-end industries, and arguably better than if the China shock had not occurred. So anyway, David Auto recently warned the
I was thinking of another piece, but I'm about to grab it a little bit later to substantiate a point.
US that a China Shock 2.0 could be on the horizon, but this time it's not about cheap factory jobs and toaster assembly lines. Rather, it's about China moving in on those exact industries at the very top of the value chain. Things like semiconductors, airplane manufacturing, electric vehicles, and AI. And if America were to lose its edge in these areas, the damage would be far worse than the first China shock, because these industries are where the real money and global power lies. So this plan from China pretty much started a decade ago. In 2015, they rolled out Made in China 2025, a bold plan to move the country's manufacturing industry.
All right, I want you to pause this, and you can screenshot this, take the receipt, or go to the video. It's listed below. I'll go to it real quick. By Clyde's China's plan to cripple America's economy. Right, more being that washpot. All right, so this is basically China's plan, and to weaken and cripple, to cripple the economy, right? 10 sectors, IT, tools, aerospace, high tech ships, high speed railways, energy saving, and rare earth minerals, the new materials, medical, the medical field, agriculture, and power equipment, essential things. The goal is a global superpower because as he states in the video, the economy is tied to political, it is in fact tied to political power, right? And of course all this stems from from the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1, when Alexander, when he conquered, Western Asia, Greece, Rome, all that, and established Esau as as basically a superpower, or right, being the head of all nations, right, right, and force the other nations to become tributaries under them, that's what made them an economic superpower, by basically colonizing these other nations and forcing them to give resources, and building up their infrastructure in cities, man. And that's basically what what China is attempting, or is going to do, is going to do, right? So so all right, so let's get those precepts out. Da, 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 da. Yeah, first Maccabees 1. Also, lucky I meant to get in the KJV. All right, Maccabees chapter 1, on verse 1. And it happened after that, Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, which came out of the land of Chittim. And we know Alexander was a descendant of Agag, and Agag was a descendant of Amalek. Right, so we going back to Revelation, that's like Numbers 24 verse 20, where it says Amalek was the first of the nations, right? By his latter end that he shall perish forever, roughly paraphrasing. And it was Alexander that that put Esau, Edom, that got a foot, that as the apostles and elders, the brothers say, that gave him the foothold, in the world, man. Making him like making him a superpower, right? Being that making him the that if I'm not mistaken, and making him the that third and fourth beast. If I'm not mistaken, Babylon, being the head. Actually, let's get this. KJV 4 beast Daniel. Let's start at verse 1. Actually, let's get Daniel chapter 7 in the Blue Letter Bible. All right, here we go. All right, visions of the four beasts. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream of visions of its head upon his bed, and he wrote in his dream. And he told us some of the matters. Daniel spake, and I saw a vision by them. Behold, the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, and the four great beasts came from the sea, diverse from one another. The first beast was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld it. The wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted from the earth, and stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Right, I was talking about ancient Babylon. I beheld the second beast, like told it a bear, as I raised up from one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth between the teeth, and I said, let's arise and devour much flesh, and I believe that was Medo-Persia. Yeah. The second beast, that's referring to Medo-Persia, and I beheld it, lo, another like a leopard, which upon the back had four wings of a fowl, and it had four heads, as in dominion was given to it, and and that's representing the Greek Empire, right? Because when when Alexander conquered them, I believe Alexander was wearing a leopard's pelt. We could confirm that. Hey man, that's Esau. I'm trying to hide that. So we're gonna get AI. He was wool mightily for depicting wearing the skin of a lion. And you know that's Esau lying. So we're gonna get we're gonna get another AI DeepSeek. Let's see. One moment, brothers. All right. Let's take a look at this Alexander mosaic. Let's see here. If we can get a clear one. Let's see. Slovakia. I'm trying to find it. If I'm not mistaken, on his left shoulder. Yeah, on his left shoulder. He right here. Well, his right, our left. It appears to be some sort of animal skin, right? Which is believed to be leopard. And this is me looking at using DeepSeek, right? But we know spiritually, right? That you yeah that it, that the third beast is talking about the Greek Empire. All right, so going back to Daniel chapter 7 verse 6. After this, I beheld and lo, another leopard, which upon his back had four wings of a fowl, and beast also had four heads, and dominion was given to it. And after this, I saw in the night visions and beheld the fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth, and devoured and break in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet, and it was diverse from all the beasts that are before it, and had 10 horns, right? And that's talking about the Roman Empire, right? And that iron teeth represents his military, as the apostles and others say. And of course, the 10 horns is it's talking about the ten nations that make up NATO and the EU, right? Right, and what made it diverse was the fact that it was the first that had that had that had a democratic government, right? Where they elected their officials, right? Right, just like what you see today in Babylon the Great, going back to the two horns like a lamb, but spake as a dragon, Revelation 13, and and that's the beast that I was referring to, Rome, in this image, right? Its ways of life, its philosophies, right? I considered the horns, and behold, there came among them another little horn, and born before whom were three of the first. Before was it Saki? I considered the horns, and behold, there came among them another little horn, bore whom were there three of the first horns plucked by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like a man, and mouth speaking great things, right? It's talking about America, the ancient age reigns, and I beheld thrones were cast down on the ancient of days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was pure wool, and his stones like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire, and a fire stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times and times 10,000 stood before him. And the judgment was set, and the books were opened. And this speaking of and this is talking about Yahweh, because it refers to him as the Ancient of Days, man. Actually, let's see. Let's go strong. It's Ancient of Days. Cardinal number ancient. Right. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, the Ancient of Days is referring to Yahweh, right? And we know the Son of Man is Yahweh Shai, right? Because if you read on, it says here, I beheld then, because the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to a burning flame. And that's and that's talking about when Babylon the Great, America, gets destroyed with them ICBM nuclear missiles, right? Which is gonna happen. Once America, their economy shuts down, they go into full martial law with the Insurrection Act, full chaos in the streets, and after they roll out that MOTB and start micro-CIPing everyone. Well, then that's when Yao Bashi and Yao Shai is gonna present the fathership. The nukes are gonna start flying. The electric gonna get beamed up, right? Right. All right. Verse 12. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, and their lives were prolonged for a season and the time, right? So they only had a certain amount of time, for each kingdom, right? And now we're at the end of this kingdom, right? The second leg of the Roman Empire. And I saw in the night vision, I behold one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was dominion, glory, and kingdom, that all people, all nations, languages should serve him, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that shall not be destroyed, right? And that's talking about Yahweh Shai, right? So jumping back to Daniel, actually jumping back to now jumping back to verse 1, though in the first division. Actually, no, Salakia, right? Salakia, I almost lost track, but all right, going back to the main point, right? So 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 all this, right? All these kingdoms being established, right? We are seeing the end of Esau Edom's kingdom, right? All right, all right, this was to substantiate the point that, that Esau's in rulership. This is Esau in rulership, right? So going back to the first Maccabees chapter 1, and he made many wars and many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, and he went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Why? Because they were scared. They couldn't face him at the time, right? Because the Lord Yahweh raised him up, and he was exalted, and his heart was lifted, right? Meaning what, he became proud because the Lord raised him up during that time, right? And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him, right? Right, so what they had to do, they had to give resources, right? Lands, precious metals, animals, crops, women, you name it, man. All slaves, all that went to to Esau, man. And just like what you see now, but but now the Lord's raising up Moab, to help, take down Esau's kingdom. And once Esau's kingdom, is about to go down, right? Yeah, then that's when which real soon, man. He's like, by December or the beginning of January, he's probably gonna enact that insurrection act, right? He already has troops, sent. Set in every major city. So we already are in the beginning stages of Jacob's trouble, right? So we're just waiting for things to become full blown. Once once this damn devil enacts the insurrection act, right? All right, so I'm gonna let him continue.
Up the value chain. You may remember me mentioning it very briefly in my past video here. Instead of pumping out cheap toys and t-shirts, they wanted to dominate advanced industries, those that were held by the US. And how were they going to do it? By pouring money in. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in state-backed funds, subsidies, and tax breaks. Just last year, they launched their third semiconductor fund worth nearly $50 billion to push self-sufficiency and cut dependence on US tech. And so China set market share targets where 80 to 90% of domestic sales must come from Chinese firms. What this means is that they're building vertically integrated companies in industries where even America's most valuable company, Nvidia, still rely on outside manufacturers like TSMC in Taiwan, who then rely on a Dutch company, ASML, for their machines. Like, China wants to keep pretty much the entire supply chain within the country. Now, you might think that's never gonna work. And from 2003 to 2007, the US led in 60 of 64 critical technologies. China, just 3. Fast forward to today, however, the US leads in only 7, and China now dominates 57 out of the 64. That includes radar, advanced aircraft engines, drones, and satellites. with many direct military uses. For instance, look at advanced aircraft engines. They're filing over 70% of the world's patents each year, and in total patents, they've already surpassed the US. And what this ultimately means is that though let's be honest, when the recession comes, it's going to make it all that harder, if not impossible, to bounce back economically, especially considering how the US debt has surpassed its GDP. And yes, if you know anything about economics, I agree with you. Measuring economic activity via GDP is considered bad because it fails to account for human factors like quality of life, work-life balance, and societal well-being. But as an Australian, all I can say is, personally, I feel like the quality of life is better here, despite the fact our GDP per capita is more than $20,000 less than the US.
And that take, and that and that takes me to a few scriptures. Before suicide mind, there will be no work for Isaiah 19. Actually, let's do. All right, Isaiah 19. And we're gonna start at verse 14. The Lord Yahweh Bashim Yashai have mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work, as a drunken man staggers in his vomit. Right, and that's Caesar Nero. Right, that cruel Lord. Or making all these stupid decisions. Right, his drunkenness. Right, going back to a scientific racism. Right. Because of that, he pushed away, allies that could have boxed in China, but instead, right. Right, what he's doing is he's pushing, his allies, towards China, right, because of his policies, like enacting tariffs, on these countries, and hopes to, to gain money from them, but instead of, being patient and cooperating with them, to isolate China. The Lord put the spirit on Nero, to make these stupid decisions. Basically causing his economy to fail, right? And basically trying to buy up and take over these tech positions, these tech and high tech manufacturing positions, right? Right. Neither shall there be any work for each of which the head or tail or branch or rush may do, right? So you see less and less people, right? Being able to find jobs like in the tech industry, in the IT industry, those that went to a 4-year college, and they're not able, to find these jobs is because these jobs, right, are being taken over by AI, right? Which is all part of that NWO. To eventually roll out the MOTB, right? That's why you're seeing, an uptick, in the homeless population, right? And and now these Babylonians, right? You see them complaining, making videos saying that they can't find work is because of these policies, right? It's affecting, people in the tech industry, farmers, or is it, and certain manufacturing jobs, like the aerospace, is that, as you saw listed, man, they no more jobs here, the mirth of the land is ceased. Let's get that, the mirth of the land. Isaiah chapter 24 verse 11. There's a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone, and that's what we're seeing, man. You see nothing but mourning, man. People complaining. As I said, people complaining that they couldn't find jobs anymore, right? Why? Because Babylon is collapsing, right? We about to enter through the straight gates, man. And they Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, the strong men shall bow themselves in the grinders' seats, because there are few, and those that look out the window will be darkened, right? Right, there ain't no more jobs, man. China, man, is taking up all, Babylon's, remaining sectors, that basically made it great in the world economy these past few decades, right? And now they're about to enter in, and not just a recession, a depression, right? Which they're going to cover with that insurrection act, and enacting martial law, causing nothing but chaos in the streets, right? There's gonna be the supply chain is gonna be broken. There are not gonna be food in the shelves, right? No, as you see, no jobs. People are gonna go mad and lose it, right? It's gonna be nothing but all out hell and chaos, as you can see, man. It's gonna get worse from here, man. That's why, man. We need to stick to Yao Bashim Yao Shai in these times.
For the simple reason being, our government believes that access to healthcare is a basic human right, unlike yours.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
And yeah, man. The mercy leaving, the mercy gone, man, and that's all because of the big beautiful bill, man.
Get your ass on.
Anyway, sorry, I went on a tangent again. But not to be too pessimistic, when this recession hits, if coupled with a second China shock, it genuinely could spark another Great Depression. And
yes.
This isn't some sort of secret. I'm definitely not the first person to make this claim online.
And you said right here. Let's scroll back just a little bit. That second China shock, man, is gonna start. A second Great Depression in Babylon, right? And that's also gonna give an excuse. For Babylon and Israel, to attack, to attack China, because they're gonna say, oh, they're a threat to national security, because they're basically taking away their jobs when when it's Caesar Nero, right? Making all these stupid decisions, and which basically is losing their jobs. Which again, it could be whether Trump knows it or not, or it could be the elites. You're playing 4D chess, so they get the default on their debts and eventually roll out their MOTB, right? Either way, prophecy is gonna play out, right? The MOTB is gonna get rolled out. They plan to attack, China, but once they do that, right? As you heard from the speech of Professor, I believe his name is Professor Victor Gao, that one Moabite. Right, he said that if you attack China, China will make sure you don't attack back. Meaning what? They're gonna fire every single they got at Babylon, right? China, Russia, in India, man, Iran, every nation, including the EU, man, because the EU is getting the short end of the stick too. Babylon, man, they literally just forced, they're basically forcing the EU to buy liquefied natural gas. When they had that Nord Stream pipeline. Which Trump, man, which I'm gonna get real soon. Which Trump basically confirms that that the U.S. blew up, so to make the Europe a vassal state to them. Being dependent, right? Which I believe it goes back into the 10 toes. Represent the European nations being both strong and weak, and now they're weak right now. Oh, so let me get that receipt if I can find it. Salakia. Let me see if I can find it. Because I know I have this receipt. Bear with me for a few moments, brother. It's lucky. I'm trying to find that receipt. All right, the audio boss me. So I found the receipt. All right. Give me a few moments. And I'll get that receipt. All right, there it is. Again, before I play it, I'm gonna flash the fair use, copyright disclaimer. You see it right here, fair use. All right, video topics right here. All right, so we're gonna play a portion of this video. To prove the point that
22, the Nord Stream systems were sabotaged. They were blown up in an attack. And by the way, speaking of Nord Stream, in a meeting in the White House that Trump held with Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, the former head of Germany's arm of BlackRock, Trump boasted that he ended the Nord Stream pipelines, and in particular, he made it clear that he wants to force Europe to buy more and more energy from the US. That is LNG, liquefied natural gas from the US, and oil from the US, not from Russia. Listen to Trump's very frank remarks here.
Well, remember, I'm the one that ended Nord Stream 2, going to a place called Germany, come to think of it. I'm sorry I did that. But I ended Nord Stream 2. Nobody else did. That's the largest, essentially the largest pipeline in the world, going to Germany and other countries. And by the way, we have so much oil and gas, you will not be able to buy it all. I mean, you literally, we have so much, and I hope we're going to make that a part of our trade deal because we have more than anybody else. We have actually the most by far in the world, probably double what anyone else has. So we'll work on that. I'm sure that's something we'll discuss today.
So this means that even if Europe wanted to buy Russian natural gas, it can no longer get it from the Nord Stream pipeline, and delivery of gas in the pipeline that goes through Ukraine fell to zero in the first half of 2025. And now Russia is considering sending its gas from the Yamal Peninsula in northern Russia to China instead of to Europe, which was the other major source of Russian gas. So the announcement.
All right. So I'm gonna pause it there. So basically, what you're seeing is Esau casting himself out. So let's get the next precept. Matthew 12. Matthew chapter 12. And we're gonna start at. We're gonna start at verse 25. This is Yahushua speaking in the red letter. All right. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall his kingdom stand? But it's basically right. Well, it's basically saying, a house divided cannot stand, right? But it shall have an end. And right, and that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing Satan cast out himself, right? He's basically making Germany and the whole of Europe, right? A vassal, subservient to them, which is not going to be in favor for the EU, right? That's basically gonna stunt their factory their factory developments in Germany, right? And eventually, right, when the economy collapses, right, Europe's gonna feel that, and then they're gonna hate Babylon, right? And it goes to what? That beast hating the whore, right? All right, and also. All right, Mark. All right, I also want to bring out Mark chapter 3, starting at verse 25. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end, right? And now what you're seeing is we're seeing the end of Esau Edom, right? Because because we're seeing the end of his rulership. Esau's getting desperate. That's why you see him making all these stupid decisions, right? Right. Right, because he knows he has but a short time, and he's about to come down with that great wrath, Revelation 12 verse 12, man, which I'm gonna get in a minute, right, Revelation 17 verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, thee shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, right, and you best believe, man, the EU, NATO, man, they're gonna fire all the nukes at Babylon, along with China, Russia, India, Iran. Man, any country that got nuclear capabilities, they're gonna fire all that at America, right? Right, and that's gonna be that lake of fire, man. The sea of glass mingled with fire, just as in the Book of Revelations, man. That's the elect. Lord willing, we be a part of, and see that happening, man. Bashim Yashar, Babakashah, man. Lord willing. If our sacrifice be worthy. All right. So continuing on.
And this isn't like some sort of secret, like I'm definitely not the first person to make this claim online. Unfortunately, something else that's probably all
Commercial, skipped it.
Perhaps you might be thinking that maybe if the US stops importing from China, that could stifle their progress. And to an extent, that seems to be the goal of the tariffs. But a key part of China's strategy is this shifting of trading partners. As the strategist Sun Tzu once said, don't depend on the enemy not coming, depend on being ready for him. China isn't betting on being friends and begging to trade with America. Rather, it's building a future where they don't even have to ask. Just 25 years ago, 42% of China's exports went to the US. By 2023, that number had fallen to just 13%. And the shift is easy to see. This visualization from the Lowy Institute says it all. Blue shows countries where the US is the top trading partner, and red shows China. Instead of selling the majority of their products to the US, China is now everywhere. Southeast Asia, Europe, South America, South Africa, and the Middle East. Asian countries alone have overtaken the US as China's top buyer, and China achieved this through the help of the Belt and Road Initiative. Since 2013, China has poured over $1 trillion into things like railways in Laos, ports in Sri Lanka, highways in Kenya, power plants in Pakistan, mega projects that stitch it closer to new partners. At first, the West criticized it as being too ambitious and too expensive. But a decade later, more than 140 countries are on board, representing 75% of the world's population. But the true purpose of the Belt and Road Initiative is about influence. By building essential infrastructure where Western money was absent, China locked itself into the economic lifelines of these countries. The payoff, you might be wondering? Loyal trading partners, steady demand for Chinese goods, and most importantly, less dependency China as well as other countries have on the US. Now, I want to talk about Trump because...
All right, and before we let him continue, we're going to get a precept on that. All right, Obadiah chapter 1 verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him, right? Right, in that Belt and Road, and initiative, pretty much, brought them together, to go against Babylon, right? Right, and now what you're seeing now is the effect or the impact of that, which is Babylon the Great, losing trading partners in industry, with these tariffs being slapped on it. So that takes me to to the next precept. I'm gonna add that saved here. Let's get Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 8 through 10. Yeah. And shout out to the saints of Jersey, the Water Brothers, for the scripture. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 8. Remove out of the midst of Babylon, and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be as the goats before the flocks. For lo, I will rise and cause us to come up against Babylon, an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrow shall be as mighty as an expert man. None shall return in vain. And that's these other nations, right? Right, China, BRICS, from and other nations in the Belt and Road Initiative, man, that have nuclear capabilities. They're gonna fire at Babylon, right? And Chaldea shall be a spoil, and the spoil shall be satisfied, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, right? And of course, it's talking about ancient Babylon, right? But the prophet Jeremiah, right? He was seeing this vision, of a future Babylon, which is Babylon the Great, aka America, that's that's going to be destroyed, with the ICBM nuclear missiles, again, this is going to happen after the MOTB is rolled out, right? Right, that's and that's what they're preparing for with this insurrection act, man. I mean, by around the end of this year, man, they could roll it out as soon as January. You never know, because Trump said, by December he's gonna get troops, stationed across Babylon. Pretty much. So, so we only got a few months left, man. Babylon doesn't have much time. Yahweh Bashim Al he's speeding up the days real quick. Man, soon, the famine of the words is gonna happen. This internet's gonna shut down. This ministry is gonna end, right? And then that's when the elect are gonna start to get persecuted, right? Right. So that's when we gotta stay strong, man. And pray that Yahweh Bashim Yahshua be with us during these times. And your brothers and your few sisters, that are new to this, calling the names of Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, Yahweh being the names of the Heavenly Father, and Yahushai, who the world ignorantly calls, JC or Jesus Christ, his true name is Yahushai, man. Israelites out there, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, right? And of course, which mainly make up the bulk of Israel, the 12 tribes, and you Israelite foreigners, you speckled birds, right? That look like the heathens, but your seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Right, only the elect, right? The remnant's is gonna make it out of here, and Lord will, we be a part of that number. All right. So continue on with the video.
Because Trump's actions have not been something, in my opinion, China has expected. It's actually been a catalyst to help China speed up their plans even more. And what I mean by this is that China's current strategy that I mentioned just now has an Achilles heel. And what I mean by that is that if all the countries ultimately choose the US over China, all of it will fall apart. And with that being said, there's an article I read recently, which I'll link in the description, called "Trump is a Gift That Keeps on Giving to China." And it just lists out all the reasons Trump has made it more favorable for countries to ally themselves with China over the US. For instance, in the article, on the topic of India, it says Trump is taunting India that it has a dead economy and it might one day have to import its oil from Pakistan. This is how you lose friends and squander influence. I bring up India because during the Obama administration, the strat was simple: get closer to India to use as a proxy against China. The reality is, India already has tensions with China, and a stronger India naturally works against China's interests. And in an ideal world for the US, partnering with India means building an Asia-Pacific trade network that could push China out of the picture and even shift factories from China to India. But here's the problem. Launching verbal attacks and tariff wars against India doesn't pull them closer, it pushes them away. Another strategy from the Obama administration was to befriend Japan, South Korea, Australia, and India, and basically build an Indo-Pacific circle to box China in. Since this new patch notes though, apparently it's to piss off Japan, piss off South Korea, piss off India, and piss off Australia, and have no plan. And the irony is, every one of these countries already has a serious reason to be frustrated with China. The obvious move would have been, hey, we've got common ground, let's team up. Instead, Trump's just giving them reasons to side with Beijing instead, and make the enemy of an enemy a friend. Like, South Korea literally gave you guys a lifeline for higher-end manufacturing jobs, sending workers from Hyundai to help build an EV battery factory and train American workers, and you guys called ICE on them.
So there were 452 illegals apprehended at the Hyundai mega plant construction site yesterday near Savannah. And I was the one that reported the information that I had to ICE.
Like, literally pissing off Korea for no reason. Historically, for many reasons, which I'll talk about in another video, China, Japan, and South Korea all hate each other. But Trump has literally got them doing this. I also want to mention Taiwan, which is also talked about in that article. And it says Trump has slapped 20% tariffs on the world's largest semiconductor hub and accused it of ripping off America. Last week, he denied Taiwan's president Lai Ching-te permission to stop over in New York for the fear of offending China. But it's actually this last line of the paragraph which stood out to me. Trump is capable of bargaining away Taiwan's security to win trade concessions from China. Because now Taiwan has to seriously consider whether or not they can rely on the US coming to their help in the case in which they get invaded by mainland China. And if the government in Taiwan decide that there's no hope to be the sovereign nation that it wishes to become, and that they've been left to fend for themselves, it's very likely that they will have to concede to more of China's demands as a way to avoid an all-out war. And right now, it looks more and more closer to be the case.
And that's why I said in the previous video, they're basically begging China to go trade with them, right? But after seeing Caesar Nero, Trump, doing all this bullshit, putting tariffs on them, and basically pushing away all its allies, right? They got, out of desperation, and his racist, white, quote unquote white, my superiority complex. Actually, that's basically causing all these other nations, including their own people in Australia, right? Right, to separate from them, right? Right, and now, basically, right, they're, as you see, because of the separation, right, the Lord's basically speeding up the downfall of Babylon the Great, right, and Caesar Nero, right? He doesn't know, man. And these elites, they don't know it's the Lord Yahweh Shai putting the thoughts in these men to make these stupid decisions. To speed up their downfall, right? So,
as Trump has stopped giving weapons aid to Taiwan, and regardless of what might come of this, it makes it very hard for Taiwan to trust the US government again, even after the Trump administration is out of office, as who knows when they might be betrayed again. And it goes the same for all the other countries I mentioned before. I wasn't going to bring up Ukraine for this video, but I think it's worth mentioning that there's a very popular sentiment on Chinese social media right now, in which netizens view Ukraine as a dog that was abandoned by its owner, that owner being America. Look, it just seems really strange that Trump will spend all day bad-mouthing China, but his actions are completely different, literally handing Beijing the key to America's own demise on a silver platter. And if you're watching this from America, which is more than a third of you, this video is pretty grim. I don't really know if there's a solution to stopping the next recession and second China shock, nor...
Yeah, alright, so I'm gonna pause there, right? So basically, right, it's the Lord Yahweh what you're witnessing right now is the Lord Yahweh putting the thoughts in Caesar Nero, right, to make all these stupid decisions to cause a downfall, right? With ICE deporting America's lifeline, Hyundai pushing away Australia, putting all these tariffs on Japan, India, and forcing them to ally with China, right? And that's why they made the meme, about China. He says, do nothing and win, which obviously China's not doing nothing, but but what I'm trying to say is they're not. They're not really doing anything to make America look bad. America's doing it to their to their damn selves, right? So let's get a few precepts on that. All right, Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 7. Concerning Edom, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahshai Sabaoth, oath, meaning his armies. Is wisdom no more in Teman? Is counsel perished from the prudent? Is their wisdom vanished? Yet, yeah, yeah, man. Esau's wisdom, is basically vanishing, man, to the leadership all the way to the people, man. As it says in the book of Sirach, as the king, so his officers, and what like manner are people ought to be, man. And I believe I haven't seen the video, but the brother Gabar War, man, he mentioned the movie Idiocracy, which is basically what's happening in Babylon right now, man. You just see nothing but a bunch of idiots, and that's the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Taking away Esau's wisdom, right? To ultimately fulfill prophecy of his ultimate downfall. Because really, we can't do nothing ourselves, man. It's the Lord, man. Doing all this, man. That's why the Wadi Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, man. Through the Holy Spirit, that we do have this knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Because if it wasn't, for the blood of Yahweh Shai, man. Sacrificing himself, man. We wouldn't be able to push out this truth, man. We still would have been screwed, man. And so so we gotta be thankful, man. That the Lord is ending all this madness. We about to see the kingdom really soon, right? Right. The next precept I want to get, right. Proverbs chapter 21, starting at verse 1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, as rivers of water he turneth it whatsoever he will. Oh, right. So basically, right, ultimately it's the Lord, man. Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, that's commanding the hearts of men. There is no free will, as you might think. You think you might have free will, but you don't, man. That's why you really gotta pray to the Lord that that you stay in this truth, because ultimately, man, he can just randomly bug you out and take away your spirit, man. As Elder Apostle Tahar and the other brothers, I've been making videos on, man, because because you don't know if the Lord's gonna cast you away, man. That's why King David made that prayer, asking the Lord not to cast him away after seeing what he did to King Saul, and he did it to Saul to ultimately fulfill prophecy, man, and use Saul as an example, right? So so we pray that us, that we be able to hopefully elect, that we be on the right side of prophecy, seeing the kingdom on the first go around, man. Right, and ultimately, man, this is the Egyptian against the Egyptian. Isaiah 19, we're gonna start verse 1. All right, Isaiah chapter 19, starting at verse 1. The burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahshai rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of the Egypt it shall melt in the midst of it. And that's what we're seeing right now. And the Egyptians will I sit against the Egyptians; they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom, right? And that's going to happen on both a small and a large scale, right? Alluding to what that third World War III, man. You're gonna see chaos, madness, right? Happening here in Babylon, the Great America, and you're gonna see it worldwide too, man. U.S. against Russia, U.S. against China. U.S. U.S. against Russia, U.S. against Australia, U.S. against Canada, U.S. against Europe. The EU, man. Man, Esau is completely divided, and he is through, man. The Wadi al-Bashim outside, we are at this man's end. Verse 3, and the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the council, and that's what we're seeing right now. You see al-Bashim outside destroying his council in real time, man. And they shall seek their idols and their charmers, and them to have familiar spirits, and to the wizards. And the Egyptians will I give over to the hand of a cruel lord. A fierce king shall rule over them. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh outside Sabbath oath, meaning his armies, right? And we know that cruel lord is Caesar Nero, right? And partly, you're right. We know it's the Lord putting this thoughts in him, but it's also because he's getting weak. Right, he's getting old. Right, his mind's not as good as it used to be. Right, So what's he reverting back? He's reverting back to to his primal instincts as an Edomite. Right, you're going to that hateful racist spirit. Right, not only just hating Jacob, but hating Jacob and these other nations. Right, and him being not good to his own people. Right, because why? Because he's a selfish, greedy motherfucker, man. As the scripture says, had he stolen, had he had enough, roughly paraphrasing, because it's the spirit of the damn devil, man. It's Esau, and now we are witnessing the end of this man. All right, so finishing back off the video.
How can I predict when it will hit, or if it will even happen? The signs point towards it, but at the end of the day, who really knows? I want to end my video with this. I used to be in the debate club in uni, and I would often hear the argument that China is going to collapse at any moment now because they're communist. And when it doesn't happen, they decide that China is actually cheating, something you might have also heard a few American economists say.
If one goes all the way back to 2001, that after it was admitted to the World Trade Organization, China cheated in multiple ways. China continues
And of course that's Esau slandering, lying as he usually does. You could easily tell at this point if the spirit's on you, man. The Wadi Hal Bashim Yal Shai Bashim Kakadash, man. For this knowledge was an understanding, because now we could just see through this, these devil's lies and bullshit, that takes me to another scripture, to another precept. For we are not 2 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 11. At least Satan should get an advantage for us for not ignorant his devices, right? His propaganda, his lies, his bullshit. Him trying to frame, categorize us. Man, it's all coming to naught, man. Because of this word,
to subsidize its industries in all kinds of ways. It engages in unfair competition.
Okay, so how about America cheat then as well? And after a bit of back and forth with who I'm debating with, what they always truly mean when they say that China is cheating is that China has a command economy, and it's impossible for a capitalist economy to win when competing against a command economy. And the reason why America can't do that as well is because it would harm the interest of capital. Pretty straightforward stuff. Now, I want to make this very clear before you think I'm some crazy socialist. I believe in a free economy, and if the US really believed in a true free market as well, like actually free, and China was out competing, wouldn't the logical move be to study what they're doing and copy it? That would mean central planning, long-term investments, and a strategy that balances between internal growth and global expansion. The Belt and Road Initiative I just mentioned before is a textbook example of that kind of long-term thinking. But unfortunately, that's not what America wants. Instead, it clings to the dollar status as the world's reserve currency, making sure global trade still runs on the dollar, so to keep control, and everyone else shares the burden if something goes wrong. At the same time, the US wants to cut China's manufacturing base out from under them, block their development, and strip away the gains that they've made. Why? Because they beat America at their own game. I just think it's a real shame that those in power would rather reward the greedy than address problems in society. But hey, 300 billion for Israel, because God forbid little Fatima gets to live long enough to celebrate her 9th birthday, right? Oh, and by the way, just to clarify about what I said about China before, China is not a communist state. China is, in their words, a transitional socialist state that is reacting to market forces, global trade, and material conditions that currently exist. Anyway guys, I'm starting to think boomers might have made the system around themselves. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the video, please like and
All right, so I'm gonna stop the video there. So yeah, and no, there's gonna be no Chinese century. You know why? Because that's still participating in the hope of Babylon. Meaning what? Because Moab is also gonna participate in that MOTB system as well. But with them being on top, right? So all you heathens, man, you Moabites, you Edomites, man, all you heathens, man, all you motherfuckers about to go into captivity, right? We're gonna get the scriptures to prove that. All right, Second Ezra chapter 16, starting at verse 1. Woe unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Woe unto thee, Egypt and Syria. Gird up yourselves with cloths of sack and hair. Bewail your children and be sorry, for your destructions at hand. A sword is sent upon you, who will turn it back. A fire set among you, and who may quench it, right? Right, and that's ultimately going to be these ICBM missiles, right? Not only will they destroy Babylon, but entirely, North America. But they're also going to destroy parts of Asia, right? And that doesn't include East Asia, but East and West Asia, which also includes the so-called Middle East, as Esau puts in his false narrative, to uphold white / Edomite superiority, and as well as Europe, because Europe is a part of Asia as well, man. Europe's just Western. Europe and the Middle East are Western Asia, as Chinese netizens call it, man. As these Moabites and Ammonites call it, right? Europe is, they refer to Europe as Western. They refer to Europe and the Middle East as Western Asia. That's it, man. And the next point I want to bring out. All right, Second Ezra chapter 2, verse 15. I believe that was 46, if I'm not mistaken. And thou Asia, that are partaker of the hope of Babylon, right? Why? Because they're still participating in the hope of the system. These Moabites, they're not exalting the names of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, man. Man, they don't really they don't really even believe in the Most High, man. So so the Lord's he's gonna destroy these people anyways, man. And the art of the glory of a person will be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, right? And of course they had to do that to survive economically, but we know the Lord did that to ultimately fulfill prophecy. But but the reason why he's saying that is because they think they're gonna be the next ones in rulership, right? They think, because, well, if I make you rich, if I help you, you help me, I get rich, you get rich, we all get rich, but they think they're gonna be the ones on top, on top of this established beast system, because Moab, man, he's still following the blueprint of the Tower of Babel, which is what that one world government, hence why you see all them surveillance cameras in China, right? They're following that model. But they think they're gonna be the ones on top. But, that's not gonna be so, man. The Lord's gonna put all these motherfuckers into captivity. All right. Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glorify thy lovers. You see them, their factories, they do all these trades, them trying to win that soft power or war, do with these other nations, hence why they call them, that thy lovers is because they're trying to gain favor, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee, right? Right? Why? Because they want to appear good in front of these nations, right? Right? So they can be the next ones in rulership. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore saith Yahweh, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses, and destruction and death, and the glory of thy power shall be dried up as a flower, and the heat shall rise that is sent over thee, right? Right, and that's the Lord saying them ICBM nuclear missiles over there as well, man. Thou shalt be weakened as a poor woman with stripes, and as one chased with wounds, so that the mighty and lover shall not be able to receive thee right. And that's basically what Babylon on in Israel they're gonna do. They're gonna plan to attack China, man. And China's gonna get hurt significantly too. With war and the ICBM nuclear missiles. But once that happens, right? Once that fucking happens, right? That once the in the midst of them, attacking, implementing their micro C-up, China's gonna send all their fucking nukes, man. And Babylon, can fucking kiss their ass goodbye. So and that's gonna be it for these nations, right? That's when Yahushai, the elect. That's when Yahushai is gonna come back, beam up the elect, man. The 1/3 here in Babylon. On pertaining to the book of Zechariah, and the mixed multitude scattered across that believe in this testimony, they're gonna get beamed up as well. And Babylon's gonna be destroyed, or that's the glass mingled in fire, because we're gonna see Babylon being set on fire. As it says in the book of Revelation, we're gonna get them new spiritual bodies. The lost within our inward parts, so we're never gonna go off. We're gonna be immortal because we're never gonna sin, and we're gonna act, the laws of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. That as it says in Yahushai's prayer, man, in the Lord's prayer. All right, and one last precept to close out. Book of Sirach, Book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 25, verse 7. There be 9 things which I have judged in my heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that hath joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. And we are in the Wadi Yahweh Bashim Yahushai Bashim Kakadash, that we're seeing the fall of our enemy in real time. So with that, I hope this lesson's been edifying to you, Akim, and if you Akwath that may be listening and watching, and to that. And to you guys, I say, Call Halayim La, Abanawa, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rukah Kadash. The more honors and respect to our apostles and elders, great millstone, who rule on us his truth. I would also like to say peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in 1/3. This is Brother Salah, and with that, I like to say, Shalom.